After 9 years and much spent, not a single meal served.
Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre square off in the House of Commons talking about school food programs. It seems this is a program, something that the Trudeau Liberals could easily implement just to try to seem like they're doing something good for Canada. And it's a joke, because we already have school food programs in most provinces. I've been digging into this. Offering some funding to those programs would be a good thing, but having a federal school food program is not something that's really needed in Canada. It just needs to be putting some funding towards the current existing programs. I'll give some examples of this, but first let's jump into the House of Commons and see what they're talking about.
Mr. Speaker, too many children are going to school on empty stomachs, and that is not fair. Can the Prime Minister inform this House of the next steps of our plan to support middle-class families getting ahead?
Great question.
I hate these like set up canned questions. Oh, Prime Minister, can you tell us what we're doing that's so great? Oh God, give me a break. These Liberals are so pathetic when they do this stuff.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Brampton South for her question and for her hard work. While the opposition leader is taking cues from his lobbyist entourage on how to make the rich richer, we're investing in programs to help middle-class Canadians. Yesterday's budget includes a national school food program. It's expected to provide meals for more than 400,000 kids a year and save the average family as much as $800 per year in grocery costs. This is what the Conservative leader has already announced he'll be voting against.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
And after 9 years and much spent, not a single meal served. Right. What he has served up is a tax on the food of the very children he claims to want to help. A tax that will cost every single middle-class family more than they get back in rebates, according to a scientific study by the Parliamentary Budget Officer. A tax he increased by 23%. If he really wants to stop the hunger for 1 in 4 kids in schools today, will he axe the tax?
That's just it, the carbon tax.
Mr. Speaker, just this past Monday, millions of Canadians received the Canada carbon rebate in their bank accounts. That puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadian families across the jurisdictions in which it applies, according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer. 8 out of 10 families, which is middle class and lower income families. But the Leader of the Opposition chooses to stand once again with the wealthiest families, the ones with big indoor swimming pools and 9 big cars. Those are the things they're choosing to stand with because we're putting more money back in the pockets of Canadians.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister thinks anyone who puts gas in their car is rich and needs to be made poor. He thinks any single mother who's not already pouring water in her children's milk is too rich, and he wants to make her poorer. He thinks that families that are heating their homes in big, cold Canada are too rich, and he wants to make them poor. A little bit rich, coming from the guy who stuffed his family fortune in a tax-sheltered trust fund and helps his billionaire island friends avoid paying their bills. So why doesn't he stop taking from the have-nots to give to the have-yachts?
Hear, hear.
Yeah. Trudeau is...
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in this budget, we're proposing to ask the ultra-wealthy to pay more in taxes to support lower-income Canadians and middle-class Canadians, something that the Conservatives are standing against, Mr. Speaker. We've cut the child poverty rate in half since 2016. We've continued to move forward on investing in supports for families right across the country. And with this budget focused on fairness for every generation, we're continuing to do exactly that.
This guy has created so much poverty in Canada, and just an update from 2 days ago in a video I did, I showed a clip of one of those tour buses going around Victoria and showing the tent cities everywhere, and I broadcast that here on the channel. And just yesterday, Justin Trudeau was in Victoria, and guess what? They've banned those tent cities now. They're kicking all the people out of the tents out. Basically, those people set up the tents close to the food bank so they can go get their free meal every day. And now they have to walk, I don't know how far, kilometers or so to get back there to get those free meals. It's David Eby and Trudeau are like, they're like that. They're together. They're one. You could just say it's the same party. They're both deplorable people.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It's not the opposition to the Conservatives he needs to worry about. It's the Liberal Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador. Quote, on the carbon tax in particular, the Prime Minister has tried to bait me at times with certain ad hominems and name-calling almost. But look, we have a very different opinion on the carbon tax. I wish the Prime Minister would understand that. He's being very sclerotic in his approach and on this ideological marriage that he has to this carbon tax. Mr. Speaker, will he end his ideological marriage with the carbon tax so that Canadians can eat, heat, and house themselves?
Yeah, that's
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I am resolute that I will fight climate change and put more money back in the pockets of Canadians right across the country. Any Premier is welcome to come forward with a plan to put a price on pollution that meets the levels required.
Look at these losers.
By the federal government instead of complaining. But that is what we will continue to do. We will ensure that a price on pollution that puts...
This guy just said, instead of complaining, talking about a Liberal Premier. This just says a lot about old donkey mouth here. Like, that, it says a lot about his character. I mean, we all know he's a slimy rat, but he's just showing it right here in the House of Commons.
More money back in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Canadians, including in Newfoundland and Labrador, continues to be in place right across the country, because that's what Canadians need for a stronger future and for affordability.
We don't need any of this, and this is clearly, he's an extension of the WF and their plan of a global carbon tax. Canada is the first implementation of that, of Klaus Schwab's plan. Check out my previous video for more on that.
Parliamentary Budget Officer confirms, in fact, that 6 out of 10 Canadians pay more in carbon tax than they get back in rebates. 100% of middle class or middle quintile Canadians pay more in tax than they get back, with it being especially bad for rural and suburban Canadians. And now we have 2-year highs in gas prices all across Ontario. Ontarians punished because of a 23% carbon tax. They can thank him every time they fill up the tank. Why won't he axe the tax so that Ontarians can afford to drive to work?
He doesn't care about us. That is why.
Mr. Speaker, Ontario is an excellent example of a jurisdiction that chose to move forward with its own cap-and-trade system so they would not be subject to the federal carbon pricing backstop. But it was the choice of a Conservative Premier to scrap the carbon pricing system that they had that took on the federal carbon pricing backstop. But that's not all bad, Mr. Speaker, because that actually puts more money in the pockets of 8 out of 10 Ontarian families, which is something that the Parliamentary Budget Officer has confirmed repeatedly. Mr. Speaker, we're fighting climate change and putting more money back in people's pockets.
You're just lying to us over and over and over.
The Honourable.
So they just jump into French here. Let's go ahead a bit.
Mr. Speaker, austerity is what people are living every day when they can't afford to eat, heat, or house themselves after 9 years of this Prime Minister. But when they pay the GST, they assume that they're getting something in return. It turns out that they pay $54.1 billion in GST, and it costs them $54.1 billion in interest on the national debt. Does the Prime Minister realize that not 1 penny from the money Canadians pay in GST goes to valuable services? It all goes to pay wealthy bankers.
That is absolutely outrageous.
Once again, in the face of the challenges Canadians are struggling with every single day, the solution by the Conservatives is for government to do less, to invest less in supporting Canadians, less for seniors and dental care, yes, less for child care spaces, less to invest in medical supports and in health care, less to invest in building more homes. The solution proposed by the Conservatives is for government to do less for Canadians. We are continuing to invest in people responsibly with the best, lowest debt to GDP in the G7. We will continue.
Less for bankers and bondholders, Mr. Speaker. More for doctors and nurses. This year, for the first time in over a generation, the federal government will spend more on interest for the national debt than we do on health care, after he doubled the size of the debt and grew health spending slower than the previous Conservative government. Why is it that he wants to give $54 billion hard-earned Canadian tax dollars to wealthy bankers and bondholders and not doctors and nurses?
That's clearly his plan all along. That's where his allegiance is.
Minister.
Speaker, that would perhaps be a more credible partisan argument if it wasn't for the fact that the Conservative Party consistently stood against investments to support Canadians. The dental care program we're putting forward that's going to help already the 1.7 million seniors who've signed up, the Conservatives have not only voted against, but are busy spreading misinformation around the country to try and scare people out of that program for partisan gains.
Mr. Speaker, David Dodge, proud Liberal and former Liberal appointee as governor of the central bank, said that this would be the worst budget in over 40 years. It turned out he was right. We've had John Manley, who said the Prime Minister is pushing on the inflationary gas pedal, Manley being a former Liberal finance minister. Now we even have Bill Morneau condemning the government of which he was the former finance minister. Mr. Speaker, why is it that so many Liberals have come to the conclusion that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost?
Checkmate, man.
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, there are people like the Conservative Party of Canada that are going to choose to stand with the ultra-wealthy and not stand with young people who need better supports as we ensure more housing, more investments, more opportunities for them to succeed in an economy that is increasingly tilted towards the ultra-wealthy, away from young people and the middle class, because they stand with the ultra-wealthy.
Dude, you're the ultra-wealthy.
Speaker, all the adults in the Liberal and NDP parties are saying that this budget is irresponsible. We have John Manley, former Liberal finance minister, saying this Prime Minister is pushing on the inflationary gas pedal. David Dodge, renowned Liberal, is saying it could be the worst budget in 4 decades. Bill Morneau, remember him? And before he became Bill No More, he said that this is a troubling budget. And even Tom Mulcair says that there's too much going to debt interest. Isn't this like the NDP Liberal marriage? The parents went away and the rambunctious, restless kids went and trashed the place?
Pierre's an absolute savage, man. Oh, look at this.
Prime Minister.
Speaker, while the Leader of the Opposition continues to focus on partisan attacks, we're going to stay focused on building a better future for Canadians. Speaking of inflation, Mr. Speaker, this is the 3rd month in a row in which inflation has been within the Bank of Canada's target range. That is because we continue to govern responsibly in a fiscally sound way that is at the forefront of the G7, even as we step up to invest in Canadians and in their future. Confident countries invest in themselves and their people, Mr. Speaker. That is what we are doing, while the Conservatives propose to do less, to invest less, to support Canadians.
Just to FYI, inflation's going back up right now. It was 2.8, now it's 2.9, and those are their numbers, which don't seem to be really accurate. It's probably a lot more than that, but even based on their numbers, the Bank of Canada's numbers, it's going back up.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, it's not me that's doing personal or partisan attacks against this Prime Minister's agenda. It's his fellow Liberals and New Democrats. It's his coalition partner who simultaneously attacks everything he does and then enthusiastically stands up to support it. It's the Prime Minister who attacks his immigration minister for letting the system get completely out of control and then attacks himself for doubling housing costs, making life so unfair. If they're so busy attacking themselves and their own record, why don't they just call a carbon tax election so Canadians can vote them out?
Yeah. Let's have it.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker.
Excuse me. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this government is making the choice to invest in a fairer future for all Canadians, for every generation. That is the choice we're making. Now, the Conservatives are continuing to choose to stand with the wealthiest in this country, choose to do less to invest in childcare, less to invest in solving the housing crisis, less to support young people across the country who need to feel the opportunities they can build in the future again. We will continue to be there to put money in the pockets of Canadians, to put homes in their communities, to build a stronger future for them and their families, while the Conservatives continue to promote cuts and austerity.
Pierre has absolutely broken his spirits. Look at him. His spirit is gone. He's got no fight, no nothing. He's a broken, pathetic little man. Now, I mentioned at the beginning about the school food programs. Let's actually look at those. So we've got this one here. This is in Nova Scotia. This is called Nourish Nova Scotia School Food Program, $18.8 million, which you can see here. And set to go up to $100 million of an annual investment by 2027, 2028. Now, this is what Trudeau should be helping support, but he'd rather just build bureaucracy versus actually feeding kids. You've got New Brunswick here, same thing. They've got school food program. Got another one here, PEI, school food program. These all seem to already exist. Trudeau wants to put his name on a program. It's just to buy votes. The guy is an absolute fraud. He's Trudeauing. He's Trudeauing everything. Go watch Andrew Scheer's video on Trudeauing, a new word. Let's start using it. It's basically someone who's a liar, a thief, a scumbag, who's a gaslighter. It's all of it combined. It's the greasiest and slimiest liar out there. Trudeau is Trudeauing the school food program. He's trying to make it his own because he's a thief. Alberta already has a school food program. BC also has a school food program. $214 million right there. Once again, Trudeau is Trudeauing this. Canada is a system where the provinces decide what's best for the province. That is the Premier's job. Danielle Smith knows what's best for Alberta and what's in her area, where, in theory, David Eby should be doing what's best for what the people of British Columbia. Instead, he's just Trudeau's lapdog. Scott Moe's in charge of Saskatchewan. Wab Kinew in charge of Manitoba. These people are in charge of their areas, and Trudeau should just be supporting them. But he's too narcissistic for that. He has to have everyone just love him, love him, love him. And if you really think about it, from him being the student of Klaus Schwab, it gets really gross because he's narcissistic. Trudeau's narcissistic, but he also has this goal that he's trying to fulfill with Klaus Schwab. And I bet Trudeau's thinking that Klaus Schwab's going to drop dead here pretty soon, and he can take over that World Economic Forum position. That's what Trudeau wants. He wants to be the world government leader. He wants to be the king of planet Earth. I bet you that was what his thought is. So he has no problem being one of the young leaders that was penetrated by the cabinet. To anyone in Canada who thinks Trudeau is doing a good job, they are uneducated and need to get informed now, because this is a slippery slope. The carbon tax rolled out in Canada as the tip of the spear, the tip of the iceberg, as a test, and see if the people revolt and how far they can push it to do country by country by country. They want full control over everything so they can tax everyone and have full control of the money source of planet Earth. And good luck rolling this out to places like China. Like, I know they're just going to roll it out to as many countries as they can. And once they get kind of global dominance, then they can force their way on places like China and North Korea, etc. These WF are out of control, and Trudeau is well embedded in there. I mean, you can look up all the Chrystia Freeland, Jagmeet, they're all on the WF website. Simple programs like the school food program, this is just to him to look good because he's trying everything to get reelected. But the thing is we hate his guts. He thinks he can lie to us and we don't see it. They've mistaken our kindness for stupidity, and they're going to be gone. And not only that, after they're out of power, all those liberals are going to be heckled for the rest of their lives. If they think they can walk around our streets and not get heckled out of every restaurant they sit down in, think again. You guys have made a major mistake by stepping on Canadians and thinking he wouldn't come back to bite you in the butt. Thanks for watching to the end of the video here. Be sure to subscribe. If you want to check out some merch, I have that on the shelf down below. We'll keep fighting for freedom, and I'll see you guys in the next one.